I think if you want to build trust and relationships and do business with people, you nailed it early on. People do business with people they trust. That's one of the things to me that's cool about the 3x3x3 is it's not a cartoon character. It's not a flyer. It's a real human being. You are seeing their name, their face, their voice, and that's great. But if you want to take it to the next level, go out and get in front of those people. We're going to be
Yeah,
doing some new stuff in 2026 called Benefits Ally Live, where we're going to be doing some road shows,
that's great.
which I'm excited about. But I think if you truly want to have success in this space, you got to be visible. You got to get people to trust you. And it's a lot easier to develop trust when they can see your name, your face, your voice, the way you explain it,
Right.
whether it's on a 3x3x3 challenge, which is great, or it's physically face to face, shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye. You gotta build trust.
Welcome to the Clearly Beneficial podcast, the show where we rip off the Band-Aid and explore the future of healthcare, benefits, and the people driving innovation in the industry. This episode is brought to you by Health Next, the company leading the way in helping employers build enduring cultures of health and well-being, reducing medical cost trends, and increasing organizational performance. To learn more how they can help you, visit healthnext.com.
Well, welcome everybody to the Clearly Beneficial podcast. I'm Vincent Catalano, your host, and today I'm very excited to have a gentleman that I met on LinkedIn, and we've known each other probably about I feel like 4 or 5 years. Chris Fisher, the founder of Benefits Ally, and I like to call Chris the point solution wrangler because he has figured out how to bring information about companies in the employee benefits marketplace that do specific things for employers. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me, Vincent. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, great. I'm really happy to have you because I followed you for a long time and watched the work you've done and have been fascinated because, back in the day, and I'll say back in the day, I feel like it's really came to the fore in COVID. A lot of VC-backed companies, a lot of companies started coming to the market that were providing solutions to employers beyond just health insurance and the classical health, dental, vision, and all the things. These folks were solving for very specific problems like musculoskeletal issues, mental health, you know, HSAs and funding, telemedicine, anything in between, well-being, wellness, and all this. And so you started Benefits Ally.
I technically started probably a decade ago. I don't exactly remember the date, but I started probably a decade ago doing something sort of related to what we're doing, but a little bit different. It was really about still bringing the point solutions to advisors, but it was really based on data. So we had some data warehouse technology we were leveraging to kind of go to advisors and say, hey, give me a bunch of raw claims data, and we'll come back and generate this really nice report that shows you specific savings opportunities. And, that worked really well, but it ultimately pivoted into the 3x3x3 challenge kind of during COVID, which is how a lot of people kind of know me today, for better or worse, as, hey, 3x3x3 challenge, right? Yeah, that's what I do. So
explain more about that.
Yeah, so the 3x3x3 challenge, the way I kind of describe it is it's really an on-demand elevator pitch. I think so many people in the benefit space, and I've been in the benefit space for 15 plus years at this point. They're overwhelmed by the sheer number of meeting requests they get. And unfortunately, I think it's just only getting worse. And so for, now, if you're a, benefits broker, consultant, client manager, employer, kind of anybody in the benefits ecosystem, the sheer number of meeting requests you get, emails, LinkedIn DMs, phone calls, is just endless. And, it's really tough because, you're still trying to stay informed. You still want to stay plugged in. You want to have, innovative solutions, solving problems, et cetera. But you're really in a tough spot because you can't say yes to everything, because you say yes to every meeting request, you're going to sit through 90% of meetings that are a waste of time and do nothing other than take meetings. But if you reflexively say no to everything, you're going to end up saving a lot of wasted time, but you're also going to miss the 5, 10, 15% of solutions that can make a real difference for your clients or prospects. So that's really where the 3x3x3 challenge was built. It's an on-demand elevator pitch, like I said, and it stands for 3 questions, 3 slides, 3 minutes. So I interview someone and we ask them the same 3 questions every time. We ask them very directly, what is it? What do you do? How are you different? And then who's a good fit? And they have 3 slides and 3 minutes to answer those 3 questions. So the idea is whenever someone watches a video on our website, they know exactly what questions are going to be answered, and they know it's going to be under 3 minutes with no more than 3 slides. So they, as a broker, consultant, employer, whatever, can watch it and make an informed decision. Does this make sense to have a longer meeting on? Does this make sense to forward to my client or prospect? Should I share this with my practice leader, my account manager, whatever? Or can I safely move on from this because it's not a good fit for my client, not interesting, I've already got a solution in this space, whatever. So it really goes back to this idea of, 3 minutes to earn 30. I kind of joke with people all the time, 3 minutes to earn 30. Watch first, then decide. Watch the 3x3x3 challenge, and then you can make that informed decision about what to do with that information.
No, I think this is I've always thought it was brilliant, because with the preponderance of these things in the marketplace, it's impossible for, given any category of point solution, for a benefits team in an organization to properly evaluate those things. And so at least what the 3x3x3 does, it gives everybody a flavor of deciding to want to move forward with another conversation or not. So how many of these companies have you had on the 3x3x3 in let's say in the last 5 years? I mean, let's not go all the whole time, but I mean, the last 5 years, what's the rough number?
I think I technically first started it, in 2022. So it's definitely been less than 5 years. It's over 500 at this point. It's quite a few. If you go to my website, there are 10 plus pages of videos that kind of just go on and on and on. And it's really grown, I think, beyond what I ever thought it would. I thought we might do a couple a month. And now we're recording usually multiple, every single week. There's a little bit of seasonality to it. Q4 things slow down a little bit. People are out, on vacation. I take some time off, but we record a lot. I'm recording 2 or 3 this week. I just had another vendor reach out to me out of nowhere and was like, hey, sign up. Cool, bring it on. Let's do it. And I think go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go, keep going.
I think the other thing that I think appeals to a lot of people now on the benefits side is that whether you're, again, an employer, advisor, consultant, broker, they're using it kind of as a filter, just as a way to say, like, I'm not saying yes to a meeting request. I'm not saying no. I'm asking, do you have a 3x3x3 challenge? And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of, and I'd like to say this was, like a planned thought coming into it, there was just more happenstance around it, is that it's a level playing field. I think there are a lot of, when you have these big conferences or other, solutions or whatever, and, it's you got to spend thousands of dollars and to have a, booth or sponsor something. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But to me, I like the idea of a level playing field where if you're a bootstrapped startup with 3 people, you have the exact same opportunity on my platform versus a public traded company with a 7-figure marketing budget and 50 people on their marketing team. Everybody gets the same 3 questions, 3 slides, 3 minutes, period, end of story. And I think that's something that, at least for me, maybe as a fan of the little guy, I just like the idea of everybody being able to compete on a level playing field. Your ability to tell your story and get in front of the right people, at least in my maybe idealized world, should not be contingent on the size of your marketing budget.
Yeah. And a lot of these companies, to your point, are small. They're angel investors, which has always been an interesting kind of thing for me because, a lot of these companies come to the table and, they then need or want the employer's data to do the thing they need to do. And I've always questioned that from a security point of view. How does a small company ask a large employer for, all the employee data? And, here's a group of maybe 12 people in a room somewhere, pounding out a point solution. You have any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say a couple things. I don't, people sometimes, I have been a broker years and years and years ago at a boutique firm that doesn't exist anymore. It's now part of a bigger firm, Higginbotham, based in Texas. Data integrity is important. I mean, obviously we have, lots of laws and HIPAA, and there's things like SOC 2 compliance, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you're going to ask for data, people need to have faith that you're going to trust it or, protect it. But I view at least what I'm trying to do as a kind of an open architecture. People sometimes ask me, it's like, well, Chris, are you vetting? What process are you, requiring to have people be on your platform? And my answer, which I think makes sense to me, and I'm sure some people may disagree with it, but I'm like, the reality is, as long as they're willing, as long as they're in the employee benefit space and they're willing to kind of follow the rules of our format, we're going to give them the chance to tell their story, because the reality is every brokerage firm, even individual people, employers, total rewards leaders, have different approaches about the things they care about. I know, some consultants that only want to work with companies that, have been in business for 10 years and audited financials, and a lot of other just very, very in-depth, compliance rules to engage with them. And I know other people that have no problem being someone's very first, client. Like, we have no track record, no nothing, because they pride themselves on being a little bit more bleeding edge. So from my perspective, I want to give everybody the opportunity to tell their story, and then let you as the individual employer, advisor, broker, decide what you want to do with that information. Because the reality is, just like anything else, right? There's no best car, no best hamburger, no best, home builder, no best, phone, right? Some guys like Android, some guys like Apple, some guys like, whatever. So I try to take the approach of, I'm going to give you all the options. Anybody who wants to step into the, arena, so to speak, and do a 3x3x3 challenge, come on in, and then let the chips fall where they may.
So no, I think, to your point, there's the fact that everyone has free access to the site to be able to explore and do the research they want to do. And that could be, in an organization, it could be a benefits manager at any level. It could be a CHRO, it could be a broker, it could be an account manager, it could be anybody, who's really interested in a specific topic. I'm just curious, I haven't been to the site in a minute. Are the solutions, are they sorted chronologically only, or are they sorted in buckets of the general type of solution? Like, are all the telemedicine solutions in a telemedicine bucket, or how is the site sorted?
It's a really good question, and I'll tell you how we do it right now, and I think it makes sense to me. So first of all of the videos are all sorted chronologically based on the date that they were recorded. And we do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think when people are browsing our site, they want to see kind of what's newer versus what's older. They go to the site, they haven't been to the site in a couple of weeks, they want to see what new videos are. And that's a way to do it. And also, all the videos actually have the date that it was either first recorded or the date it was refreshed right on the page. So when someone is watching a video, it's another frustration for me about kind of the traditional benefits approach, is you're looking at a piece of content, flyer, slide deck, even a video necessarily. You're like, well, when was this recorded? Is this a month old, or is this 3 years old? That can impact how much faith you have in the accuracy of the information, especially with how fast things change. So to me, by sorting it chronologically, it makes it easier for people to surface relevant videos, and it also, or newer videos, and it also creates an incentive for people who have participated to refresh their content on a periodic basis, because as your video ages and it becomes on page 7 and someone's got to scroll past 350 videos to see it, you're just naturally going to get less traffic. That being said, though, we do have a couple other ways that we try to make it easier for people to navigate the site. Every video on our site is fully transcribed. So, there are captions on there, which also means people can read as well as watch. If they want to read, read the transcript below, It's essentially acts like almost like a de facto flyer, but all of those transcriptions are also indexed for keyword searching. So if you go to our website and type in student loan, captive, telemedicine, clinic, DPC, PBM, GLP-1, whatever, any video use or any keyword or words you search for, it will look in the transcript of over 500 videos in a fraction of a second.
Wow.
And kick out any video that has GLP-1, student loan in it, whatever, to try and surface those. Tagging by category is really complicated. And what I mean by that, and I'll use telemedicine as your example. Telemedicine is both very straightforward and also very complex. Like, what is telemedicine? Is telemedicine like the traditional teledoc? You call a doctor, you're sick, you get a script. Well, what about, maybe a disease specific program that uses telemedicine to facilitate that? Like as an MSK vendor or a diabetes vendor that does virtual care coaching, is that telemedicine? What about an on-site clinic component that has a telemedicine piece of it? Is that telemedicine?
Yeah.
And you can go on and on and on about that kind of stuff. So to me, the keyword search is the most logical way to do it. And then we also added a tagging feature that basically surfaces other videos, almost like YouTube or Netflix, where based on what you're watching, it looks at what you're watching. And if you scroll down, it will surface up to 4 other videos that we think you might want to watch based on what you're watching. So it's really helpful if someone's looking at, an RBP vendor or a diabetes, solution, cardiometabolic, whatever, decision support, perfect example. They're watching a decision support video. They're like, oh, cool. What else should I be looking at? Scroll down, it'll surface 4 other videos that share the most kind of competitors in common. Which is really cool. If you're an advisor looking for other solutions, you're like, okay, I like this. What else should I be looking at?
Yeah.
That's helpful. And if you're a vendor, that's incredibly valuable too. Someone might not be looking for your solution explicitly, but they're looking at one of your competitors. And they scroll down and go, oh, never heard of these 3 companies before. Let me check them out before I make a decision.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, I really like that idea of being able to let the search engine search in the larger documents to find the keywords versus people missing out on the right tag for their own thing. So I think that's a really good way to do it. So how, I guess I have a couple of different questions. How does the brokerage industry engage with the site, and specifically the brokerage industry? And are you seeing more interest from smaller independents, mid-size regionals, or the big houses, in terms of, because the big houses tend to, depending on the culture of the organization, and I've worked for two of the top 10s in my career, they either have their own centers of excellence or solution vetting teams that will only allow you to pick from this menu of point solutions that are there. So where are you seeing the uptake in the brokerage space for what you are doing?
So it's been really interesting. I think there are a couple of things that I'll say to answer your question. We have people who follow our content from the largest national firms down to the smallest boutiques and everything in between. I think you're right. A lot of larger firms have access to either internal tools, centers of excellence, et cetera. And my attitude always is I'm not trying to replace anything that they are doing. I am just saying this is another resource for you. Use it if it's helpful. If it's not, disregard it, because there's no cost to access our platform. There's also no login required either, which is one of the things that I think people really appreciate, is that when they go onto our site, there's no tracking. If you go on and watch 5 videos, that data is not shared with anybody. Especially for the advisors and employers, they're often, reticent, I think, sometimes to engage with content, because it's like, oh, Chris looked at our LinkedIn profile, looked at our video, downloaded this case study. Now you're in a CRM with an email sequence going, oh my God, how do I make these emails stop? With us, you can browse completely anonymously and privately because there's no login. You just browse, watch, and then if there's something that grabs your attention, great. If not, move on. And I think the people that tend to engage with our content, and we have, again, we have 23,000 people who follow our content on social media, probably over 7,000 who follow our, our weekly newsletter, email newsletter. And it's a pretty healthy community of people who follow it. It's going to be people also who tend to be more innovative and forward thinking. Like if you're the type of advisor, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, if this is your approach, but if you're kind of advisor who always does the same things, you've got your handful of solution partners and they are your solution partners, period, you don't play outside the sandbox, you're probably not going to use our platform at all, and that's okay. But to me, there are a lot of people who pride themselves on being innovative, creative, solving problems. And those are the people that I think really like what we're doing. I've got multiple testimonials on my website from 3 of the top 10 national firms. I've got two compliments I can think of recently from both top 5 national firms. One of which was, she was like, "Chris, don't tell my corporate team this. I get better ideas from you than I do from our corporate office. Our corporate team is supposed to do this." And the other one told me a long time ago, which is, again, a tremendous compliment to me, is, this is a guy who was running a region. He's like, "Chris, whenever you're in town, like, I will often cancel other meetings, not client meetings, because you're not crazy. He's like, I will move my schedule around to meet with you because I know that I'm going to walk away smarter, having learned something." And that to me is what this is about. I want to help people become smarter, better informed consultants. And I truly view the videos on our site and the companies that people were highlighting as tools in a toolkit. Is everything going to apply to everybody all the time? Absolutely not. That'd be a ludicrous claim to make. But what I will say is, while you're sipping your morning coffee, while you're sitting in a waiting room at the terminal waiting for your flight, pull it up on your iPhone, and in 10 minutes you can pick up 2 or 3 or 4 new tools to your toolkit. And if you do that regularly, a year from now, you've got 150, 200, 250 new tools in your toolkit. And so when you're out there talking to employers, clients, colleagues, prospects, and something comes up, you're like, "Oh, what, have you ever considered doing this? Oh, you haven't? Why?" To me, it's a way to consistently level up your game in a efficient manner. Is a lot of what this is about.
I love that. I love that. And you and I can have an offline conversation, because one of the things I hope to be working on, later this year is a broker training academy.
Mhm.
I really want to be able to take my years of experience as a broker, translate it, because everybody keeps telling me that, even the large firms aren't doing what's necessary to train. And it's not just on the technical side. It's really, what happens when they get in the room, when a broker or a consultant gets in the room with a potential client. What should that conversation look like? How should that conversation go? And so this is some of the knowledge that I really want to impart with this. But so in all the interviews, so you've been doing this for a while. You've got all the content. You've got a lot of people who've done this. So the first question I want to ask you is, obviously you're no altruist. You're not giving this away for free, and share what you're comfortable sharing about your business model. How does Chris pay the rent? I guess.
It's a good question, and the reality is not very well. Being candidly honest, we've tried a few different ways to kind of monetize it. Candidly, it's usually been kind of a side venture and hustle for me. I've had other full-time jobs during the time I do this, and for me, a lot of it has been a good way to grow my network. A lot of multiple of my last full-time jobs have been people that have often said, "Chris, like, everybody." And I don't know if I know everybody, but I know a lot of people. And I think I know a lot of people from, again, the top, 5, 10, 15 national firms, down to regionals, down to boutiques. And by virtue of what we do, especially with a content social media perspective, my network, goes from, San Diego to Portland, Maine, and Seattle down to Miami, Florida, where a lot of people in this industry have strong networks, but it's very geographic based. Like, hey, I know Philadelphia like the back of my hand, or I know, hey, I worked with, these 2 large national firms for 5 years. I know them great, But you ask me to go outside those two, it gets real dicey real quick. And I think that's where, I can add some value. One of the things we've done, and we're going to be doing more of it, I think, in 2026, is some messaging help. I think a lot of vendors, whether they'd like to admit it or not, are not as good at messaging as they think they are, especially when it comes to short form content. Doing a 30-minute presentation might be okay, but when we ask them to get it down to 3 minutes, they struggle. My kind of overarching, to me, the three keys for any good messaging, whether it's 3 minutes or 30, is it needs to be clear, concise, and compelling. And a lot of vendors, or just people, I think, struggle with that. Their message is muddled. They're too close to it. They can't see the forest for the trees. They want to over explain. They want to just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and hope something sticks. And they don't realize how competitive the industry is. And if your message is not crystal clear, if it's not compelling, if it doesn't respect people's time, why is someone going to want to have a second or a third or a fourth conversation with you? Why are they going to want to bring you?
I was struck a lot by the, and interacting with point solutions in the last several years. I'm struck by almost their naivete. You come up with a good idea, you hire some people to execute it, and you literally have no clue as to how to bring it to market. And I felt like that to me was, and some of them have done it well, and some of them have scaled, and some of them have gotten critical mass. The one that sticks out to me the most is Garner Health. I remember when they started from nothing, and that company has grown because they had a good solution with immediate ROI for an employer. A lot of these other solutions, they're nice add-ons, but do I really need that? But to your point, a lot of them don't enunciate or explain what they're doing to take a potential customer over the edge to want to buy, and I think that's a challenge. So in your evaluation, because you're sitting there too, evaluating these vendors yourself. You've got experience, the deal. You're sitting there when someone's doing a 3x3x3 and you're going, oh man, this is not right. Or this is amazing. You're doing one or the other. I'd love to hear from you sort of don't name names or anything. I'm interested in hearing from you, your experience with those light bulb moments where you're like, damn, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. And then I also want to hear oh my God, this is crap. I'm interested in hearing your balanced story about those vendors who've come to you and you're like, yay.
So that's a good question. And I'll always say a couple of things. I try to, really be Switzerland in the sense that I don't like to say, people come to me all the time and say, Chris, who do you like in this space, whatever. And I always like to say, look, I'm not going to, the biggest thing is I'm not just qualified to make that judgment because I don't work with employers anymore, right? I'm not the one seeing, my knowledge of most of these companies is limited to what they said in their 3-minute elevator pitch. And you wouldn't expect someone to make a super solid recommendation based on what someone heard in a 3-minute elevator pitch. What I will say is I think the ones to me that resonate and often have more traction is they've got a clear problem they are solving. They can articulate why solving that problem matters. And I think they also tend to be pretty clear about who their target market is. I think a lot of vendors, not a lot, but I would say a number of vendors make a mistake when the pitch is too generic. They're like, look how cool we are. Look how cool this is. Isn't this fancy? Isn't this exciting? And I think the thing that a lot of them underestimate is that they are one of 100, 250, whatever the number is, of carriers, point solutions, TPAs, captives who want to do business with you as a consultant, employer, advisor, broker, whatever. So you got to, it can't just be that, hey, we've got a neat widget. Great, that might get you to number 14 out of 100 on their list of cool things to do this year. But as I tell people all the time, you need to be in the top like 3, 5, for them to do anything with it. Because if you're number 14 out of 100, okay, you're better than 86 other solutions, but it doesn't really matter. You might as well be number 99 at that point, because you're not going to get implemented. The other thing that I always say is, and this goes back to some of the stuff that I hear more often than I would like to, candidly, is when people talk about things that have almost become just like generic. They talk about transparent, or service is probably the biggest one that just is a pet peeve of mine. It's like, well, we provide ourselves, we in court, we're all about customer service. Like, okay, that may or may not be true. I hope it is true. But the reality is that's not something people can validate in a 3-minute interview. That's something you earn over time working with people and references, etc. But if your video or your marketing material is so generic, where I could take your logo and put someone else's logo on, it's the same flyer, that's a problem. And that happens way more often than I think companies would like to admit. And why, if I'm an advisor, consultant, employer, why am I going to get excited about that? That's a problem to me. The last thing I'll say that to me is really important is also being clear about who your target market is. I get a lot of vendors. I just talked to one earlier this week, where I was fortunate enough to be at a conference, the U-Powered Symposium. Shout out to Emma Fox for putting on another great event. And when vendors sometimes talk about who's a good fit, it's, oh, we're a good fit for everybody. And I always kind of roll my eyes, trying not to roll my eyes when they say that, because it may or may not be true. But what I hear as an advisor or former advisor is, when you say you're good for everybody, it means you're really not you're not a good fit for anybody. It's like, we'll take whatever you got. We're desperate, come on board. We can do this for everybody. To me, the mistake a lot of vendors make, and what they should be doing instead, is you want to narrow down and give the person you're talking to a sense of who you're really a good fit for. Because most advisors, I'm sure in your career, Vincent, you had, a dozen, 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever clients you were working with. To me, they should be trying to say, well, we work with groups of all sizes, but our most of our groups are between 100 and 1,000. And we've got a lot of success in, the blue collar space, this segment. Now I know where to bring you in if I like you, et cetera. And there's a logical next step. And then, from the vendor's perspective, if you know you work well in that space, now if you get a chance to get in front of that employer and, even better, sell it, you're going to execute on it because that's part of your wheelhouse. The advisor then feels good about working with you, goes, great, you know what, Chris, you guys killed on the last 2 clients. What about a white collar group? I might want to bring you in here, and you built some trust with that advisor, which is something way too many vendors don't think about at all.
No, absolutely. I mean, a lot of them, it's like they come to market with the, if you build it, they will come strategy, and it doesn't work. If there's any industry that relies on relationships, it's the employee benefits industry, I think, and it's the advisor relationships with their clients, the advisor relationships with their vendors, and everybody in between, even within an organization. Obviously, relationships are super important. So I appreciate that answer, because it tells a story that, some of these folks come to the table with brilliance, and some of them all think they're brilliant, and
they all think they're brilliant. Yeah,
they all think they're brilliant, and they at the end of the day, you are but one of many platforms that they have the opportunity to market themselves through, and they still have to execute. But I think the way you've done it for the industry, by being, Switzerland, like you said, I think speaks highly of you and your interest in educating the industry, and let all comers come whether they're the vendors themselves or the consumers of the information, and let people make up their own minds. You're not like, getting a solution come in and you're not ranking it on a scale of 1 to 5. You're just putting it out there and let the chips fall. And if there's a curiosity and something interesting, and so I want to wrap up with this one question, and then I want to go to the last one, really, is this notion of, in your experience in the last several years of doing this, tell me about a surprise. Tell me about something that came to the table that you were genuinely surprised by. That signed up, you brought them on the 3x3x3, and you were like, wow, that's I wasn't expecting. I wasn't on my bingo card today.
I mean, there are probably several. And again, in an effort to be Switzerland, I'm not going to mention kind of anybody by name, but I will tell a story that I think will be illustrative and helpful to the audience. One of the first vendors I met, that was actually pre 3x3x3, although they have 3x3x3s now, or they've recorded multiple takes on it. But when I first met this company, and I forgot how we got connected, but it was an intro, etc. And I first heard their pitch, I was like getting totally skeptical. I have a reputation, I think, of being a straight shooter sometimes. Like, I'm not afraid to call out bad behavior when I see it and be like, no, you're whatever, and just kind of calling out things and etc. And I was just like, no, that can't be true, and it turned out that, it really was what they were saying. What they were doing was possible. And over time, I kind of learned it, and at least it built up trust with me, from my perspective. And again, I'm just one person. So I will tell people, that's a whole idea of kind of, you do your own due diligence, you decide what you want to do with the information out there. But the reason I say that is that I think a lot of vendors underestimate, and employers for that matter, just underestimate how skeptical buyers are, because they've been burned so many times. And people come in and make absurd claims that can't possibly be true. And so, look, at the end of the day, a lot of, benefits brokers, advisors, consultants, they're risk averse. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's like, look, my client has entrusted me as this trusted expert to help them navigate this increasingly complex employee benefits environment. And if I bring a solution in place that doesn't work, that fails, that something bad happens, it's ultimately my judgment and reputation that's on the line, more so than yours, Mr. or Miss Vendor. So I think there are a lot of people that are inherently skeptical. And when I first heard this pitch, that I thought was just like, well, that's too good to be true. That can't possibly be right. And I was ultimately proven, at least from my own judgment, wrong, that what they were doing was possible. But I think it's indicative of how skeptical people are, and why it's so important if you were selling in this space. And this is true, again, whether you're an advisor, vendor, point solution, whatever. People are inherently skeptical. So if you're a vendor coming in saying, oh, we can save money on your pharmacy, or we got a better captive mousetrap, whatever, expect advisors to be skeptical. And how do you not eliminate, but how do you reduce that skepticism so they feel comfortable spending more time, talking with you about it? And the same thing if you're an advisor or consultant. If you're going out there and saying, hey, I can save you money on your health insurance. Cool. You and the 400 last people who called me and said the same stupid thing. And my health insurance costs continue to go up. So if you're going to go in there and make a claim, which most people are of some form or fashion about what they're doing, whether it's MSK or benefit costs or TPA, COBRA, whatever, be prepared in your messaging to reduce skepticism and demonstrate that you can do what you say you're going to do. And to use kind of a cliche analogy, the juice is worth the squeeze. That's the other thing, is that doing any of this stuff requires some level of work, some more work than others. So you want to make sure that if you're going to ask people to do this, that whatever the outcome is of it, it's worth the effort they are putting into it.
Absolutely. No, that's a super valid point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We're kind of at time, so I want to just first of all, the last question I really want to ask you is, did I not ask? Was there something I missed? Is there something in our conversation about the 3x3x3 that you feel that you want to add to it that I didn't ask you?
I don't think so. I think the other thing I would just tell people is, get out on the road again and get face to face with people. Like I love obviously talking on Zoom. It's getting to Sacramento isn't like a 30-minute drive for me from my hometown of Houston, Texas. But I would just say I am planning to be on the road a lot in 2026. I think if you want to build trust and relationships and do business with people, you nailed it early on. People do business with people they trust. That's one of the things to me that's cool about the 3x3x3 is it's not a cartoon character. It's not a flyer. It's a real human being. You are seeing their name, their face, their voice, and that's great. But if you want to take it to the next level, go out and get in front of those people. We're going to be doing some new stuff in 2026 called Benefits Ally Live, where we're going to be doing some road shows, which I'm excited about. But I think if you truly want to have success in this space, you got to be visible. You got to get people to trust you. And it's a lot easier to develop trust when they can see your name, your face, your voice, the way you explain it, whether it's on a 3x3x3 challenge, which is great, or it's physically face to face, shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye. You got to build trust. And however you want to do that is important.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is this industry is all about getting in front of people, and it's a, how do I put it? The benefits as a broker, as someone who is trying to open doors, it's a deflector shield business. You're constantly trying to figure out how to build that trust, how to ask good questions, how to even challenge the people you're talking to about their own assumptions. And I find those are the best conversations you can have with people, not just walking in trying to pitch something. You have to understand them first before you can even come up with any solutions. So I think that's something that is maybe, I don't want to call it a lost art, but there's a lot of sales training companies out there trying to get brokers to do that. And the healthcare space in specifically, and the employee benefits cost structures are getting so out of control and high that when the right solutions come along with the right ROI, it's good for the industry. So I want to thank you for being here on the podcast. Really appreciate your insights, and let's stay in touch, and we'll talk again.
Thanks again for the opportunity, Vincent. I really appreciate it.
This podcast reflects the personal views of the host and guests, not their employers or sponsors. See you next time.